There's probably nothing more important for a city to do than to provide for the safety of the public. That's a job that falls to our police department, and its responsibilities are far-ranging. They go from traffic enforcement, calls for neighborhood assistance, to keeping the city safe from crime. A city without an effective police department goes downhill really fast. Springfield Police Chief Paul Williams joins me today to talk about his efforts to keep our police department effective. He just released a report card to the City Council detailing what improvements they've made and what challenges remain. I think you're going to find this interview very informative. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me back.
Well, you just released the Police Springfield update on November 17th, giving us a report card on the police department for the past year.
City Council's asked that I give them a quarterly update now moving forward. So, and at the request of city manager and the mayor, I do that in writing. So I think that works pretty well. They get all that in front of them and then get to ask any questions they want after that, rather than me having to stand up in front of council and try to deliver it verbally.
I think it's a good way to do it. And then they can drill down and pick on the things they particularly are interested in.
Absolutely. It gives me an opportunity to make sure I don't miss anything that I think is important for them to know.
So how would you, if I call it a report card, what kind of grade would you give yourself?
Overall, I really think giving the department a grade, not me. I'd say it's an A- right now.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I think, crime is stabilized. Staffing, recruiting is stabilized and going up, and then as we dive through some of those things, there's some ups and downs, but overall, I think we're doing great, especially when I compare us to other cities around the country.
Similar size. You're comparing apples to apples.
When we're in every aspect. I mean, I don't ever compare crime because there's so many different factors going into it. We compare us to us on crime, and we're doing really well compared to where we've been the last few years. So, but everything else, I think we're doing really well. I'm really happy to be here. I'm proud of the men and women that work for me.
Is crime cyclical?
Absolutely. I say it's like the stock market.
Okay.
It's up, it ebbs and flows. It goes up and down. You can't get too high. You can't get too low. You can't celebrate too much, and you can't really get down the dumps. So,
what are the main drivers for that?
It's societal issues. So poverty, drug abuse, interpersonal relationships, those things really drive crime, and so we try to affect, through prevention measures, affect some of those things that might help crime go down. But really our focus is outside of preventing crime is solving crime and putting bad guys in jail. So that's the other thing. We can control some crimes by seeking out and targeting prolific offenders on every type of crime, and you take them off the street and hopefully get them incarcerated, and that will drive crime down.
Now the police department is down it's supposed to have, I think, 360 people.
Yes.
You're short maybe 54. Is that the number?
We're right about there. We've been as high as 65, 67 short. Normal is about 20 to 25. So we're halfway. We're halfway there. I say normal because our training is extensive. I have a 6-month academy and a 3-month field training program. So,
and that's more than most departments give.
It's almost double the state requirement, which is a good thing. I think the people of Springfield, appreciate that, want that. So when I say fully staffed, when we hire people for the academy, they go on the payroll. They're city employees.
So it's not like me going to college and not getting paid.
No, not getting paid and investing in yourself. We hire people and put them on the payroll out in the academy. So day one of the academy, I filled all my positions. Over the next 9 months, people leave. People retire, people resign, people get terminated. So we generally lose 1 to 2 people a month through those ways. So you look at that, and 9 months later, we're 20 people down. So I say fully staffed is being about 20 people down.
From my perspective, and if you disagree, please inform me. I think at least the pay and the fringes for being a police officer are pretty good, given the required education level and so forth. Nevertheless, it's been hard to fill those slots. Why is that?
We used to do pretty well. So the last time I was fully staffed, meaning the day the academy started, we filled every available position, was 2019. 2020, a couple things happened. We had COVID, we had the that outbreak, and then we had in policing, we had that George Floyd tragedy up in Minnesota, and people don't think that something like that 1,000 miles away would affect us, but it affected policing around the nation. We didn't get some things other communities did. We didn't have huge protests and disturbances and fights and burning and looting, because we have a really good relationship with our people, and they understand who we are and what we're about. But it affected people in the profession very negatively. The very negative narrative around being a police officer drove some people away from the profession. And our recruiting, the number of applicants was cut in half in a 1 year period. Went from having 400 to 450 applicants to, in 2021, he had 205.
Yeah.
And our retirements and resignations doubled. So I talked before about losing about, excuse me. I talked before about losing about 20 or 25 people a year. For 3 years in a row, we lost 35 to 40 people a year. So,
maybe you would have lost more, but they needed the job and the retirement.
Some of those, when you're locked into something, but so you lose twice as many, you have half as many applicants. It didn't take long for that to flip, and we went from having 20 vacancies to 65 vacancies. So,
well, I candidly, not that it's an issue with me because I'm an old guy, but it's just, from my perspective, being a police officer is just a hard job. People second guessing you. Frequently, there's a lot of emotion. And then, and later on, where you have time for quiet reflection, you say, well, that guy should have done a better job, and he's getting sued and all this stuff. I mean, who needs it?
It's always been a tough job. I've been doing this job for 45 years. I know how tough the job is, and I know what's there. But it is, with the advent of social media and the immediacy of our culture, and everybody wants stuff now, and everybody wants the Monday morning quarterback everything. It's always been that way in policing, but now it is so much harder, or so much worse in some ways, because somebody with a social media platform can critique an officer's behavior over a snippet of a video, and it makes it really difficult for people to sign up to do this job. Now, from my side, what we try to do is be open, honest, transparent, and support our officers and provide information about how we do things ahead of when things happen.
And then it's all a matter of getting the public to trust the department, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what,
once you lose it, gee whiz.
And there's some communities that absolutely lost it back in 2020 and 2021. Not here in Springfield. We have a great community. Community trusts us, respects us, loves the officers. They see that on a daily basis. Now, some were just affected by that national negativity and left, but we've had some of those come back. And I said, our recruiting numbers are up. We're making inroads. Went from being 65 down a year and a half ago to 54. We have an academy class graduating here in a couple weeks. We're already testing for the next class in February. You actually just got a report this morning. We're over 450 applicants. We've already hired 8. We have another 10 or 12 in the pipeline, and testing is still going. We had 31 people test this month.
Let me ask you this. Is 360 the right number for a town our size?
It's a hard answer. I mean, there is no formula. Now, there's a kind of an average. If you have 2 officers per 1,000, it's a good starting point of benchmark. So we have 170 population, 340, 350 officers as a starting point. The average in the Midwest is about 2.2 officers per 1,000. So you could say that's could be 75 to 400. Then it gets down to what the community will support, what we think we need, what we can fund. And as long as we're in that range, I think we're good. So would I like more? Absolutely. I mean, authorized strength has been as high as 376. Okay. We've eliminated some positions. So we got back up to there, and between 370 and 400 is probably where we need to be.
Now your report, we got a lot of things to cover here, but
Sure.
you've got all these different sort of crimes that you kept track of.
We
Well,
track
but
everything. By the way, Tom, we track everything. People ask me, do you have performance metrics? I said, give me what you want to track and what you want to look at, and we will give you some numbers to support or not.
Well, I know, but here's my question. What percent of the crimes are getting reported to begin with?
So that's always a difficult thing to look at. As I say, policing is the only profession I'm aware of that's judged by our failures. Think about that.
I never have.
Because people want to look at crime. It's crime that's occurred, so it's what we couldn't prevent. All right, we don't know what didn't happen.
Yeah, how can you? Yeah, it's called a counterfactual.
We're looking at the negative. So having said that, and I get that from some citizens sometimes saying, well, that's not the real crime rate because people don't call you. Well, I can't track what people don't report. So there's always going to be that element. So percentage of what crimes get reported across the country, it's better and different some places. I'd say in general, some crimes, everybody's going to. I say if you really want to gauge how a city's doing, look at the homicides because it's hard to hide a dead body. Okay, all right. People try. All right, they generally aren't able to do that. Not successful. So you can look at that and go, how successful are we in keeping our community safe? But outside of that, sexual assaults studies show only less than half of those get reported. Some places low as 20%. You could look at 25 to 50% of some crimes don't get reported. The more serious crimes, absolutely going to get reported. Like I said, starting with a homicide. Somebody gets their bicycle stolen, they may not want to call and report that. Yeah. You get your house broken into, you're going to call the police and report that somebody broke into your house and rummaged through your things. So as far as I encourage people, and we encourage, man, please tell us. You got to tell us so we know what's going on, so we can investigate, so we can try to prevent things. When I get that argument that, well, you don't really know how much crime's out there because people aren't calling it in, I go, man, if they don't call, they don't want our help.
Yeah,
we're not going to work on it.
Well, let's talk for a minute if we can. Let's move on to traffic.
Sure.
Traffic crashes and enforcement. What are the latest statistics telling us?
So the really disturbing thing, it's something I just got this week. We are close to our highest number of traffic fatalities in a year already, and this is mid-November. We're at 22 fatalities. That's more than double the number of homicides. We've had 10 homicides this year. So more people die in traffic-related incidents than through violent crime. And sometimes people don't understand that and where our focus should be. But to me, the most surprising or disturbing or thing we need to work on is when I looked at those numbers, the vast majority of those are not vehicles involving other vehicles. We have motorcycles, pedestrians, and bicycles being involved in a crash with a car. And over
none of those so far this year have actually been a fatality of a person in a car. So they're pedestrians or bicycle or motorcycle.
So only 4 of those fatality crashes involve vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
If you break that down, I think we have 8 pedestrian crashes.
3 bicycles and 6 motorcycles. That's what you showed.
So that's 17 out of the 21 crashes and 17 out of the 22 deaths. So, and that's really, there's 2 things that we're going to do some increased enforcement of things like pedestrian violations, bicycle violations. People crossing in the middle of a street, not at a crosswalk, at night is just a recipe for disaster, and we've lost people that way. People on bicycles who think that they do not have to follow traffic laws. They go the wrong way. They don't stop at traffic signals. They cut in between lanes. Man, that's a vehicle. If you're on a roadway, you need to follow the laws, other you're putting yourself at risk. Okay. And then motorcyclists, there are some very responsible motorcyclists.
But there are some that aren't as well.
But there are some that are not and drive too fast and drive recklessly and drive crazy and create hazard for other people.
They go up and down my neighborhood. And I'd like to ask you what you're going to do to stop that.
I get the complaints. I understand that noise is an issue, but we're focused on people creating a hazard and hurting or killing themselves or someone else. And
Right.
now, if that noise is related to somebody driving recklessly, then absolutely. But a simple noise violation is way, way down on our list of priorities and trying to address. So we're going to, in some enforcement, but really we're going to start a public education awareness campaign about if you're a pedestrian, if you're a bicyclist, if you're a motorcyclist, here's what you need to do to keep yourself safe, because you can't depend on the motoring public to keep you safe when you're doing things outside of the ordinary.
I was a motorcyclist for 25 years. I finally hung it up. I thought I'd had a pretty good run. I quit.
Good for you.
But if you're on a motorcycle, the only way to handle traffic is assume you're invisible.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
what do you want on your grave marker? I had the right of way.
And motorcyclists and bicyclists and pedestrians, motoring public has to be aware. But what you just said is exactly right. The onus is really on you to keep yourself safe. You can't depend on somebody in a car or a truck to see you or do the right thing or be paying attention for you.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of other things. I want to move on to gun violence. What was it, about 10 years ago, the state legislature loosened the requirements for gun possession?
2016, and I happened to be president of the Missouri Police Chiefs at the time, and I led the effort to fight that repeal of what was we considered the gold standard for a concealed carry law.
So what was the law then, and then how was it changed?
Sure. The law then was to have a concealed carry permit. To be able to carry a gun concealed, you had to apply for a permit from the sheriff. You had to go through some training. You had to have a background check. All right. And you had to pay a fee. Okay. 3 very simple things. But it kept guns out of
Was there an age requirement?
It's this 21.
Okay. Something like that.
Yeah.
A 15-year-old kid could.
Right. To get the permit, right? Very simple things. And the people that really wanted to carry a gun all the time, man, that was simple. Pay $100, go to an 8-hour training class, pass a background check, man, you're good to go. Kept the guns out of people that wouldn't pass one of those 3 things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also kept that casual person that, hey, I think this is cool to carry a gun around kind of thing. And the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided that they wanted to go to something that people have called constitutional carry, meaning Second Amendment says you have right to keep and bear arms. So they carry that one step further and says that means that anybody can carry a gun anytime, anywhere, concealed, open, doesn't make any difference. Didn't make a lot of sense then. It doesn't make a lot of sense now. I guarantee we're never going to go back. All right. But when that law was changed, I predicted, I said, we're going to see an increase in gun violence around the state and specifically in our community. And we've seen that from 2016 through 2023, the number of shots fired calls, number of people injured by gunfire doubled in the city of Springfield.
Well, you're the expert. I read the newspaper, particularly the Daily Citizen. That's a good
one. That's some in-depth coverage there. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That this is to some extent, I think, parallels the point I'm trying to make. My wife used to work at the Federal Medical Center, and she worked for the attorney out there. And so she had access to all the files of the prisoners. And she told me one time that, I think I got this right, there was like 3 commonalities to the people who were in there. It was mental illness, drug or alcohol abuse, or some kind of domestic violence. Mm-hmm. And she said just about everybody had at least 2 of those characteristics. And it got to the point where it was almost boring going through all those things.
Sure.
And the reason I bring that up is when I know it's just a few data points, but when I see these articles about somebody getting shot and killed, it seems to me most of the time there's drug or alcohol abuse involved. And there's a gun getting waved around, and somebody ends up getting dead. What's your sense of that?
So those three things are absolutely three driving factors. Think about that. Do you want someone with a mental health issue, a drug or alcohol abuser, or in a domestic violence situation to have a gun?
I don't think it's a good
Absolutely not.
combination.
Absolutely not. So what removing the law did was we have no check and balance on who can legally carry a gun. So, and people say, well, yeah, the people that fit those three categories, if they wanted to carry one, they would carry one anyway. Well, maybe, all right. But you know what? When we interacted with them on the street, we could then take that gun away because they didn't have a concealed carry permit. Okay, now we can't unless they're exhibiting something from one of those three factors, or they're involved in a violent crime. We can't. So,
and if you were able to do that, then somebody end up with a black eye rather than in the morgue.
and that's the second part of this. What it opened up was people that normally would not have carried or had access to a firearm had one. So those disputes, those conflicts, as you mentioned, somebody getting in a fight gets a black eye before they take their lumps and move on. Now, hey, I got my gun in my pickup. I'm going to go get the gun and come back, and I'm going to settle this argument once and for all. So we had a lot of conflicts that were escalated into gunfire because of access to firearms. So, and it's been a long road to try to turn that around.
Well, so how would you respond to this comment about people that are opposed to some form of gun control? They'll say something like, there are more guns in the United States than there are people. Or you'll never get them out of the system, so why try?
So I am not a proponent of gun control. I have more gun. My wife says I have more guns than I need, and I have a gun safe full of guns, right? Handguns, rifles, shotguns, all for a legitimate purpose. But the difference is, you know where they're all at right now?
They're locked up.
They're locked up, and I have one gun on my hip that I carry at work.
Yeah.
All right, and there's a reason for that. And guns have a legitimate purpose in society and what we do. So controlling and restricting and taking away, absolutely not. But encouraging responsible gun ownership. If you own one, you A, need to know how to use it, B, when to use it, how to use it, and C, if you're not going to be using it, it should be stored and locked up somewhere so no one else can get to it. Too often what we see are people that, especially with the concealed carry option now, people start carrying a gun and then realize, man, this is uncomfortable, or I don't want to carry this all the time, or I can't take it into the bank. I can't take it into the bar. I can't take it into church. So then what do they do with it? They throw it into the front seat. They throw it in the glove box. They put it in the center console. Maybe they remember it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they lock it. Maybe they don't. And then a couple things happen, potentially. One, somebody breaks into their truck or car, finds the gun, steals it, and then it's used in a crime. Or two, you get that situation I described earlier where they get in a conflict, they get in a fight, they lose the argument, and as they get back in, they're going to leave, and they go, oh, wait a minute. I remember I got a gun. I'm going to go solve this problem. So it's created opportunity. Access has created opportunity, which has resulted, unfortunately, in more negative consequences for folks and more crime and gunfire.
Well, I know that it's a matter of very high priority for you, and that you were involved in a group here in the community to work on educating the public on safe gun ownership. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so as I saw this increasing trend of gun violence, it's like anything else in policing. If you engage the community in fighting, preventing something, you're going to be much more successful. The police can't do it alone. And it took me a few years to finally convince our citizens in the community that I need your help. We need your assistance in controlling this access to firearms, use of firearms inappropriately, and really encouraging responsible gun ownership, not taking the tact of guns are bad. It's people with guns do bad things. So Community Partnership of the Ozarks took the lead and convened a group. They call it the Gun Safety, Gun Violence Collaborative. The initial meeting, there were 65 or 70 people there from all aspects of the community, which is when I realized that was finally resonating with folks. Everything from business owners, community leaders, the medical field, the faith-based community, law enforcement coming together and go, we need to work together to see if we can combat this problem. And so over 2 years, I think that along with just great police work, we've been enforcing and combating and targeting those frequent violent offenders and taking them off the streets. The Gun Safety, Gun Violence Collaborative has pulled together people to educate, gun safety, responsible gun ownership, and providing avenues specifically for our youth. We had a huge uptick in 15 to 20-year-olds who were having access to guns, carrying guns, using guns, committing crimes, connecting with them, not from a law enforcement perspective, but street outreach workers, faith leaders, business leaders, neighborhood leaders, parents and guardians stepping up and going, okay, we've got to do something, step in and keep guns out of the hands of these kids so that, and teach them a positive outlet for things they want to do. And I think we're finally starting to see some of the results in that. Last year, the first year, we had a significant drop, and we dropped back to 2016 levels of gunfire and people shot and killed, which was a significant improvement. I mean, look at.
And do you attribute this to causing that reduction?
I'd say both. I mean, so primary is significant enforcement and great investigations and working with our state and federal partners to prosecute gun criminals. That's the first thing. And then secondly, those responsible gun owners that weren't acting responsibly, or the people that didn't know how to secure firearms and how to keep them out of the hands of kids, and what was needed to interact with our youth. You combine those things together, and I think that's what's contributed to the drop off, and I hope that continues.
Let's move on to. I want to come back to a question I forgot to ask you earlier about staffing.
Sure.
What percent of the police officers that are actually out doing patrolling and crime investigation are male and female?
So I'll throw some numbers. I said we track everything, right? So the national average of women in law enforcement is about 12.5%. 12.5% of every police force around the country. When I got here in Springfield, we were about 6% were female. We have a concerted effort to recruit more women. There's a reason for that. One, 52% of the population is female. That's an untapped recruiting pool. Think about that. That's a 40% gap between working and available.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's like I said, policing is a difficult job. It's not for everybody, but we've been successful in reaching out to women, and we're sitting right about 13% of our police force now is female.
But how many of those are desk jobs? Aren't a lot of those women doing desk jobs?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about sworn officers. So when I talk about, if you talk about desk jobs, our administrative, our non-sworn civilian professional staff,
that's something different.
It's 75, 80% of that is female.
Okay.
But your question was about officers.
Yeah, I was.
So I'm talking about those 360 sworn positions, of which I have 54 vacancies right now. 13% of those, the people putting a uniform on, a badge and a gun, driving around in black and white, or investigating crimes, are female.
When I was on council years ago, I'll try to make this quick, but we got some federal money to hire more police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did it. And we hired a bunch, I don't remember how many. And that wasn't too long after that, we were getting some complaints in the public about how some of the new cops just weren't very friendly and, just seemed to take their job really seriously. So we had a consultant, I think, the guy who used to work for the LA Police Department, came in and he looked at it and he said, here's the deal, guys. He says, you got a lot of young guys that are police officers coming on. He says they're going to make good cops someday. But he says they they're not well seasoned yet. And when they run into some situation, it escalates pretty quickly. And he said if you wanted to reduce that, you ought to have more women police officers because they know how to talk people down, and these young guys don't.
So there's two things that you're absolutely correct. When you hire a large group at the same time, you get that 1 to 5 year mentality.
Yeah, that's what he's
on the street at the same time. I will tell you that's universal. Men or women doesn't make any difference.
Okay,
young cops are young cops, and you need some seasoning. I like that word. Right, some maturity. However, there is that component of men and women are different. They're wired different. They act different. They talk different. They know how to treat people different. And regardless of people want to argue that, right? But there's a softer side and a means of talking to people that sometimes women do that better. So we do benefit from that. And there's some studies, some academic studies out there that prove that to be true. So in addition to the vast recruiting pool that's out there, there's a reason to recruit more women to law enforcement as well.
Let's talk about one of my pet peeves for a minute. Everyone's got one,
Just
right?
one?
Just one. It's panhandlers at the intersection.
Okay.
It's dangerous. And, I don't think I'm a hard-hearted person, but I don't know. I'm told that you really shouldn't be handing out money. You ought to be, because it encourages that, and you ought to be however you would do it, try to get somebody to go.
Yeah, no one should ever hand a $5 bill out a window at somebody standing in the street ever.
And let's drill down. Why is that?
Well, two reasons. One, it creates a safety hazard for both the person there and the driving public as well.
Okay.
Two, you're not giving money to someone out there. A, you don't know what their situation is, why they're out there, what it's going towards. And it's enabling and encouraging them to continue to do that. Donate to an organization that's going to help someone who's in need. Find some outlet to provide a service or food or help in some way. But just giving somebody cash, it may make, and I've heard this before, it makes that driver, makes them feel good for 5 seconds.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But everything, the result of that, 90% of it's negative, or where it's going to go. So just don't do that.
Well, how come the police department doesn't run them off the medians?
So two things with that. One, and we have a pedestrian safety ordinance, which I'm going to talk about, which has been very successful and works very well. But you mentioned the word panhandling, and unfortunately, we do not have a panhandling ordinance, anti-panhandling ordinance in the city of Springfield. It's not illegal by the Supreme Court's ruled First Amendment right for people to technically panhandle. We used to have a panhandling ordinance that said you couldn't do it within 20 feet of folks, and you couldn't obstruct their path, and whether it was on the sidewalk or a parking lot or whatever. City Council wanted to expand that a few years ago, and they tried to prohibit it totally. ACLU filed a lawsuit, and instead of fighting that battle, City Council acquiesced, and they repealed the anti-panhandling ordinance. So we have nothing on the books to prevent that. Now,
so when that guy's out here on Glenstone on the median,
now that's a different story. See, so
okay.
we have passed, and this was after a couple years of study, and it's been tried and true, and we share with other communities because it is a great tool, and it's legally supported. Pedestrian safety ordinance, meaning the goal is to keep that person safe who's standing out in the middle of a median on Glenstone. It's unsafe to stand there and step out into traffic. Unsafe for that person, unsafe for the motoring public as well. If somebody skids to a stop and, what's this person want? So it prohibits people from standing in the median more than one cycle through the light. All right. You can, as you're crossing a busy street, you may not make it all the way across, but standing there through 4 or 5 light cycles, or setting up a lawn chair, or holding a sign and trying to get people to stop absolutely is not crossing the street safely.
But how do you enforce it? You've got a homeless person that's out here. I can think of one of their favorite spots seems to be at the corner of Glenstone and Bennett. It seems like there's somebody on every corner there. And they're homeless. They don't care if you write them a ticket. How do you enforce an ordinance with
So enforcement
like
is...
that?
It's complaint based. I mean, so location people complain about, the officers will go respond if the person's there. First, it's officer discretion whether they're going to warn, cite, or arrest, and all those are options. Getting the person out of that unsafe environment and moving them, and then if they are homeless, trying to connect them to services, offering them somewhere to go to get them off the street is the ultimate goal. Creating a safe environment for folks is the immediate need. So, and then we have locations that people complain about, and officers patrol those. All right, and it's a violation of that, but it's also a violation, so people understand, for the motorist to stop and hand something out the window.
Oh, I didn't know that.
that's part of the ordinance. Now, the problem with enforcing that is we have to see it. Okay. So, that happens so quickly, we don't get that unless we're sitting up at a location because someone's complained, and we have cited some motorists. All right. But the vast majority of citations or arrests are those people that are creating the hazard by being out there on the median or stepping out into traffic.
Okay.
So,
well, I'm going to confess to a crime right here in front of the police chief. So I was at, we were going to go out of town, and I stopped at the Come and Go and got a sandwich. And there was a person panhandling at one intersection. And I thought, well, I'm not going to give him any money. I'll give him something to eat.
you gave him your sandwich.
I gave him my sandwich, and the guy got the sandwich. He says, he was nice, said thank you, walked away. He came back, and he says, do you have any mustard?
Now, so what I would suggest is, faced with that situation, don't stop in the middle of the street and do it. Direct them over to the side, right? We know the come and go lot, right? People can stand off to the side of the road or in a parking lot and somewhere, and as long as you're not creating a traffic hazard, if you choose to give somebody something, you can. That's a personal choice. But I always say, find an organization that supports these folks.
So that it kind of flows into dealing with homeless people that are mentally ill. Everybody sees occasionally there's some person that's homeless. You don't know because you're just witnessing it from inside your car, but you got 2 or 3 police officers talking to this fellow or woman, and obviously they have some issues. What do you do in that circumstance?
We have a great relationship with Rural Behavioral Health. We have a co-responder program. So we've had crisis intervention team training. So for the last 15 years, officers have some additional training in dealing with folks that are mentally ill. Gives them a little additional knowledge and means to help that person. We created working with Borough once again, a behavioral crisis center. So like a one-stop shop where officers can direct someone to or take them to, and they'll connect with a mental health professional.
Will they put the person in the car and run them outside the borough? Is that what they do?
If they want it, that's a volunteer. If they want to, I mean, we do involuntary commitment. Someone that's a danger to themselves or others or violent. We're gonna handcuff them. We're gonna take them to Cox for a 96-hour evaluation.
Okay.
But these are voluntary commitment. You're encouraging someone to go. So in some circumstances, if they want to ride, we may take them. Most times it's encouraging them to go on their own. Now, 2 years ago, we partnered with Borough to do a co-responder program, meaning you have a licensed mental health professional who is riding with an officer, or they're on their own but available as on call out. Because there are studies show between 7 and 17% of all police calls for service involve someone who's mentally ill. Think about that, 7 to 17%. So I always take the midpoint. I go, say 10% of all of our calls. If we can, and out of those, the vast majority of them don't require a law enforcement response. I mean, some of them are violent and some may have weapons involved, and we need to assess that. But if that's not the case, we really need to be gone and get them connected to someone else. So the co-responder program allows that to happen, kind of a handoff to say, all right, this is not a policing thing anymore. This is someone dealing with mental health issues that they need a professional deal with that. And it's really helped reduce those amount of calls that we're going on. And then the next step in that, 988 is the crisis line now for mental health response.
Do you think it's making a difference?
And it is. I mean, we have a 988 call taker who is co-located with 911 in emergency communication. So sometimes that 911 dispatcher can get a call and go, hey, this is a mental health call. They can literally look across the room and say, hey, pick up line 3 and see if you can direct them some help. Or call because they're on the crisis line and this person is threatening suicide. They've got a firearm. They're barricaded somewhere. They hand that off to 911 and we get a police response. So it's slowly making a change. I think in the month of October, we had about 100 calls for service involving our co-responders. We're able to get them help. And then the 988 call taker in with 911 is in its infancy, but about a dozen, I think maybe a baker's dozen, 13 calls last month, were actually diverted. So no police response, handled by 988, mental health professional. We didn't have to go, and that person got connected to services. So our goal is that we're going to connect people, and then we won't have to go see them anymore. And they won't be a a repeat caller, they'll get some treatment and be connected to someone that they won't have a law enforcement response needed anymore.
Well, it's challenging, and that the job of a police officer seems to have been modified over the years. I mean, you guys are social workers and law enforcers.
I was on a Zoom call earlier today with a bunch of my peers from around the world, and it's universal. It's not just the U.S. So I had someone there from Australia, some from Canada,
Wow.
Someone from Malta and the U.S., and we're all talking about the same thing. Most of what we do is not crime related. People ask us to be a social worker. They ask us to be a counselor, a medical professional, whatever it is. And I've said this before, but I'll quote one of my colleagues who said today. She goes, "Well, the problem is at 2:00 in the morning, we're the only ones that are going to answer the call." Think about that. I mean, police are the only ones that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year by picking up the phone and calling 911. When in doubt, now if it's a medical issue and you can send an ambulance, great. Your house is on fire, all right? You're going to send the firefighters. But pretty much everything else, not just crime, but everything else, we're not sure who to send. We'll send the police because we're out there.
My dad had a saying which was, "Nothing good happens after midnight."
That's true. I've told my kids that too, and that still bears knowing for everyone.
Lots of innovations are happening now in law enforcement. One thing in particular, it's just all over the news, is artificial intelligence. Is that something on the horizon for the police department?
It is. We're starting to explore that. It's in a positive. It can be very helpful in a positive way. So, for example, we've got body-worn cameras, we've got in-car cameras. So the newest renditions of those that we're looking at would actually take that audio and provide the officer with a transcript.
After. Oh, my goodness, wow.
So not just listening to it and then writing a report, but getting a transcript and then taking that information, be able to then put it into a report. And that's available immediately after you turn it off, and it downloads to the cloud, and you ask for it and you have it. So creating efficiency is one thing. Accuracy is another. Body-worn cameras have been a blessing for officers to record interactions with the public.
It is what it is.
It is, and has also helped with evidence and crime, investigations as well. So it's something we're exploring, that aspect. Our records management system, our report writing vendor, met with them a couple months ago. They are developing a program within the report writing software that you could take this narrative, this transcript, put it into the report writing software, and it will give you a draft, just like you do now with ChatGPT or Grok or whatever.
The police officer has more time to do real police work.
And then you take that, and I mean, it still requires, and it's, like I said, we're not there yet, but I compared it to digital photographs. When we first went to digital photographs, people were like, "Oh my gosh, you can't do that. They can be altered. You need to have that 35 millimeter film. You need to develop it. You need to show it to me." Now, you get a digital photograph, it's accepted in court. It tracks every time it's been touched, every time it's been looked at. It'll be the same way with reports. So you can't just hit the AI button and generate a report, but you can give you a draft that a person then reads, corrects, puts it in the correct format, puts their input into it, then sends it to the supervisor, who's going to review it and make sure it's okay before it's entered into the system. So I think creating some efficiency, absolutely, giving us more time to go do things that we really need to be out there doing instead of spending time pushing paper is a good thing.
A philosophical question. You mentioned earlier the Second Amendment protection for gun ownership. The Fourth Amendment protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures.
Mm-hmm.
How do you achieve the right balance between protecting the public, ensuring their safety, and at the same time, this whole notion of being secure from unreasonable searches? I mean, it manifests itself, it seems to me, like if you look in England, supposedly, there's closed circuit TV on everything. So that everybody is being looked at, and it probably reduces crime. But at the same time, a lot of people would see that as an invasion of privacy. But these issues come up in different circumstances. How should we go about achieving the right balance?
Policing is at the tip of the spear in that constant conflict between public and private.
Right.
Between your rights as a citizen and the public's right to for everyone to be safe. So the simple answer, when you look at London, everything is closed circuit TV and everybody's on camera, and we're not there yet, but we've been moving that direction.
You think that's a good thing?
And the courts have consistently held, if you're out in public, you have no reasonable expectation.
Well,
of
I know
privacy.
they can do it legally, but is it a good thing?
I think it's something that we will continue to discuss, debate, and struggle with, getting that right balance. Keeping people safe is a priority. Then maybe you're not going to be as private as you want to be. Okay. But if we don't need that, then maybe you get some privacy rights extended. But, we are not talking about, recording in people's homes or invasion of privacy or unreasonable search. What we're talking about is, as you talk about cameras, if you have a surveillance camera on your home and it's recording everything in front of your home, it's also getting the street and your neighbor's house and their yard and everything else. Is that reasonable?
I think it is.
I think so too. And so we do too. And we like that. Now your neighbor may not like it that you're recording their front door and who's coming and going.
What's the difference between looking at it and
absolutely
telling you what I saw as opposed to being able to prove what I saw? But I think one area that it makes it, there's a lot of strong feelings. It's like what they were doing in New York City a few years ago when Bloomberg was mayor and this stop and frisk stuff, And my belief is you take a police officer who's been doing it for a long time, he's probably can look at a situation and have a pretty good idea if something wrong is going on. But being able to articulate that in a way is more difficult. And so, if you say, well, leave those people alone that you think are inclined to commit some sort of crime, there's going to be more crime.
See, there's always the justification and the articulation on what, when, where, why you stop and frisk somebody. And, under Bill Bratton 2 decades ago, stop and frisk was very successful because they were targeting criminals. I think the situation you mentioned under Bloomberg, it was different. It was targeting a community. All right. And so I think officers were given direction and did it inappropriately, which is why they didn't do it anymore.
But there was also an increase in crime, wasn't there?
Yeah, in both situations. All right. But they didn't affect the crime the second time because they weren't doing it the right way.
Okay.
You've really got to do some research. The police have to do some research about when, where, how, and why. In our community, we do it really well. You don't see those complaints from us. All right, because we know when we're doing something, we do it the right way, and we're targeting criminals. You talked about gun violence earlier, and we've taken about 125 guns off of violent criminals this year. Because we target criminals who have guns and target guns in the hands of criminals. We are not about taking guns away from responsible citizens who have a right to own them. Same thing with stopping and frisking and searching someone. There has to be a reason. And the officer has to be able to articulate that and explain why they did that, when they did it, and why they did it. And generally, we have really good results because we train our people really well.
I've got just a few minutes. I know
have just a few minutes. We were rocking along. It was good.
Know. So this is firing round, all right?
Okay, all right.
I'll name one thing citizens misunderstand most about policing.
Police aren't perfect. We're human beings. We make mistakes.
One thing that the public could do tomorrow to make Springfield safer.
Be aware, be engaged, and don't turn a blind eye when you see things that aren't right. Let us know.
What book should every police officer read?
Okay, I'm going to give you two. Can I give you two?
Okay, sure, absolutely.
First one, this is for internally. Which emotional survival for law enforcement.
Okay.
by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin. It's about keeping yourself right and realizing you can't just be all in on law enforcement. You got to have a life outside of that. Number two, and this is more general, Start with Why by Simon Sinek. I mean, figure out why you're doing what you're doing and focus on that. Revert back to that whenever you question what's going on around you.
That's great. Last question. Favorite place in Springfield to decompress?
At home, away from everybody.
With the phone off. Huh?
Phone off. Either sitting with my wife watching a movie, or sitting on the deck reading a book, or downstairs smoking something or grilling something and having a beer. I mean, that's
That sounds great.
nothing around me but my family.
Police Chief Paul Williams, thanks for being my guest today on In Our Town.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.